Hello everyone, my name is Brian Trepanier and I'll be guiding you through the process of making a simple player character for Unreal Tournament 2004, the character being George. First thing we want to do is create a box in the front viewport. So just click on the box over here, click, hold, drag, and let go, and continue to drag to move out the box itself. So now we actually have a three-dimensional shape. Now we want to select the upmost planes to be able to extrude the different parts of the George body. So first thing we want to do is come into the front viewport here and Alt W to maximize that screen, and then we're going to come into the modify section and call it George 3 this time. We did George 2 yesterday, but we're going to do another one, try to cut or try to squeeze the time in. And then down here we're going to convert that to an editable mesh to work with it, and we're going to select the polygons, and we'll just select all this here, and then now to subtract those ones we don't want to work with the side ones, hold down the Alt button and then reselect, and now all that we're actually holding is the top piece, and we want to letter F to go back to the front view, and now we just scroll up down here and we will see extrude. So we extrude once, twice for the ankle, up to the knee, and then a couple of times up for the knee, and then up to the hip area, and up from there, and we'll head up to the first section of the body. And one of these keys, the control key and the middle mouse button, lets you grab and move the viewport down. Now we continue to scroll up around the hip area, extrude up around the hip area. Now we're heading up to the above the hip first section of the body, second section of the body. Scroll it down again. I guess this is where the arm would come out, and we'll do that shoulder section, bit for the neck, and 1, 2, 3, and that makes the head. Now click over here, that brings it all into the viewport again. Want to right away get that arm out. So 1, 2, 3, that was for the head, that was the shoulder, so that's where the arm is coming in. So we will select there and extrude that out. Extrude that out again, and we'll cut on the angle a little bit so we can see a bit more. And now we're heading out to the elbow and to the wrist, and now we're at the hand. Okay, so other than that, all we really want to do is select this down here and extrude out for the foot. So now we have a foot piece. Okay, so that's the basis of George. F again for the front view, and drop down like that. We don't need it on the polygon selection anymore. We now want to be working with the vertices, so we're going to click over here, swap it over to that, and start shaping this into a George shape. Select there, and then I guess just down below this part here we move it over, and your move, your rotate, and your scale are W, E, and R on your keyboard. I don't always use them, I'm not that quick. So okay, we're going to I don't know, move this all over a bit, I guess. Move the foot up a little bit. Just now we're just shaping. This here can all come over to the line, and this here will be moved over like that. This first one here, we'll drop that down a little bit. This one here can come on over. Again, it's not really essential to be worrying about the perfection of this thing, because this is just a test model to get it all in game. Want to move that over, make it a little bigger. That looks pretty darn good. Stick the neck in, and top of the head. Move this, whoops, just this one here. Let's zoom down a little bit, and now back to moving it. Another bit for the head. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves. Okay, so that's a little bit big down here. Now we're just going to move that up, and we'll move that up there like that. That's still a bit big here. Try to get it so it fits onto that middle line, and we can raise that a little bit up that way. This here is kind of crowded. No sense having quite that many in one area. Actually, this would look like a section that you wouldn't really need on another model, but we're not dealing with another model, we're dealing with a quick little George model just to get in. A happy George model just to put it into the game. Okay, I'll just grab a quick drink here. Now that we have the basic shape, we can turn off of that. We'll come back into a polygon because I want to delete, well, I'm going to letter G, turn off that grid. It makes things run smoother. I want to get rid of those polygons that are in the middle here because they're just going to be inside the model when it's all done, and it can screw stuff up, and if it doesn't screw stuff up, it's still just wasted resources on the computer processor when it's creating this in the game. So it's hollow now, so F again, and this one over here to put into the screen. And I guess I do want the grid on just so I can see. Turn that off. I want to now mirror that image over, or that part of the mesh over, and zoom down so I can actually move on to that. I don't know why it's axis is way down here. So I'll just go up to the top here and try to match those up as close as possible. Okay, so it's just being a little picky right now and not letting me just move that little touch that I wanted to move it. Try it again. You Bestovich. Chill out. Okay. To hell with you. That's not so bad. Maybe it'll be fixed up. Well, it's really not all that proper. I don't know why it's snapping so drastically. Okay, that looks nice now. Let's take a look at the top. This isn't really helping with the time that I was trying to beat. So it's a little bit off at the top, but that should probably get fixed up when it is welded together, which is what we're going to do now. We're going to select the vertices again. Oh, no, we're not going to select the vertices. First we're going to do is select the original copy that we have. You have to select the original one, if not it messes up stuff later on in this process. You want to select the original, then attach, and attach the copy to me to it. Now we're going to go down a little bit further, down into the welds. Well, I guess we have to come back. No, we don't. This is, excuse me, one of the things I figured out yesterday, and we'll click on the vertices there. Okay, now we're going to set that to a 2, and we're going to select the vertices down the middle here, and we're going to weld them, and hopefully when I zoom in on the bottom, they're all welded up nice. That's good. And now when I zoom in at the top, please be welded up nice. Oh good, everybody's all welded up nice, no problem. Okay, so that is generally the creation of the George model. Now we'll just save, and we'll save it as George 3. And now we'll begin the texturing. First thing you want to do is, what do we have here? An editable mesh. Yeah, that's perfect. That's what we want to work with. We don't want the vertices selected. We don't want anything turned on there. That's all turned off. Just the editable mesh. Now we add an edit mesh to the pile. We're coming on over to the polygon, and we're going to select that. Hold the control key. Select all the faces of the face. That's all we want is the face. And actually we're going to do it again. We're going to turn on ignore back facing because all we want is the front of the head. We don't want the back of the head. So we can isolate the face part. And now we're going to scroll up a little bit further, and we're going to do a detach. Detach to an element, okay. And W key to grab the move tool, slide that face over. We're going to rotate it so it's on its side. Well, let's go back and add one of these angle rotates so it snaps into this angles. And now we'll scale that up using the R button and putting that in the middle. Make that big. We don't need it small. And now a W to move it. We're going to move it down close to this guy here. Who's we'll make it a little bit smaller because that way it'll create a nicer block after. Okay, so now that's in place. We don't need the this part selected. What we now need to do is add a UV map to the planer. So this is inside here is the back of the head, the inside of the back of the head. So it will show up when we a couple of steps on the line, but right now you can't see it, but there is something there, and the whole idea of removing the face is that so you can texture the face and it doesn't draw the same thing onto the back of the head. So what we're doing here is taking apart this mesh and laying it out on a flat planar view looking at us. So if you wanted to do the back of the head as well, laying it out so you can texture it up nice, you would select the faces of the back of the head, then rotate it 180 degrees so it's facing you, and then lay it out on the part here. And again, this edit mesh is important. You need that for a couple of steps later. So make sure that's always put there, otherwise you'll get really frustrated when you realize you haven't placed it there. Okay, so now we put a UV map on the whole thing. I always like to expand the size of the UV map a little bit, just to give some room for error on the end. Okay, whatever. That's done. We add an unwrap UVW, which allows you to, after the fact, go in and edit this where the positioning of the materials are according to the UVWs. Okay, so now that that's been done, we're going to come over to Utilities, and we're going to select Textporter, which is a free plugin you can get online. We'll make the size of this 512 by 512. What this program does is create the, we don't want polygon fill, I like to work with all lines and constant white, close. What this program does is create the wireframe that you bring into Photoshop so you can texture and then apply it properly. So we pick the object now, and boom, it creates the image. It's got the face. Oh, we had back face call on. I don't want the back face call on. There we go. I want to see that back, the inside of the back of the head. So the other one didn't have it. Now you can see, but that's actually the inside of the back of the head. So what you draw there will be reversed on the actual outside of the back of the head. So if you want to do otherwise, again, you tear it off and split it around so it faces you. And then, okay, we want to save this. We're going to save this as George 3 wire. Oh, cancel. I don't want to save it as a DDS. I want to save it as a BMP. Save. Okay. And now from here, we're going to head into Photoshop. Now we're in Photoshop. We're going to open up the BMP file that we just made, and Control I to invert it. Zoom up. Oh, the wires are okay. And we'll rotate the image, rotate canvas 90 counterclockwise. Double click on the hand so it fits on the screen. Now we're going to draw a face onto it. A couple of eyes. And we will save oh no, we're not going to save as. We're going to rotate that image back, rotate the canvas clockwise this time. Now we will save as. We're going to save it as a DDS, which is the Direct Draw Surface file format, best suited for game work. You would get that at NVIDIA. Do a search for NVIDIA space DDS, and it'll come up with NVIDIA DDS page where you can download this with Photoshop and PaintShop Pro. Photoshop plugin works for Photoshop 5, 6, and 7. So we're saving it as a George 3 DDS. Save. Okay, we're done in Photoshop. Back in 3D Max, we're going to now come on over to the material editor, open that up. This one's already selected. We go down to the diffuse, click on the little box here, select bitmap, and now we're gonna we don't want the BMPs this time. We want DDS, and DDS are down here. George 3. Okay, now we can apply that assign material to selection, and that's the selection that's happening over here. And this will let you see it inside the viewport as soon as you click on Click on there. It says front disabled, so I don't know what that's about. Maybe that's it. Enabled now. Viewport was disabled there for a sec. Okay, so he's skinned up, textured up. Come back over to the modifier section, and this is where it's important that you had put in the edit mesh, because what you want to do is now come on over here and turn off the edit mesh. It snaps everything back into place. Looks great. We're going to put them onto the full screen there. Come over here, we're going to do an incremental save before the next step. Save as. Incremental means it's just now going to jump up one, but just keep the original. Plus. There we go. And now we right click on the unwrap UVW, because we don't actually have to do any work in it. And we're going to collapse all. And now it's collapsed all to an editable mesh. And we're now ready to apply the skeleton beneath the mesh that controls the movement. So to do that, we come on into the facing section again. And with George here, what we're going to do first is we're just going to his properties. We're going to set them so you can see through them, and we're going to freeze them. Okay, so you can see him back there. Well, he's actually still right where he was all the time. So now what we want to do is create a biped skeleton system to put underneath them. Systems is what we select, biped, and I always use the classic skeleton just because that's just what I'm used to using. So I stretch him out, and now what we want to do is shape him to be more like the George character itself. We're coming on up into motion, and in motion we want to have the figure mode turned on here. With the figure mode turned on, you can now alter the positioning of this biped, set him up in the center more, and height wise, that's where you might have to flip these things. It gets frustrating sometimes trying to move it, can't move around, but it's because this here is the wrong one selected. So set up the biped, and we're coming on into this area here to work with the different tools now to shape the biped to fit the George character better. Excuse me. So we're going to just do a bit of not that one, not that one, that one. In this area here, we're going to shrink that down. The head, make the head bigger. Shrink it on, stretch it on out like that. Oops, I don't want just one selected. I want all of those selected if I'm going to work with them. We'll stretch those out. And now the shoulders, you actually have to physically move those over. And this one over here. And now we'll rotate the arms so that they're facing up, like such. And we'd also want to face them out, but I'm not going to bother with doing that because the hands are actually, palms are facing me right now, if George has palms. Okay, we're going to lower that down a little bit, put it more in the middle, put that one more in the middle, and now we want to stretch that one out. So once that's stretched out like that, and maybe a little bit more like that, we would be moving the whole biped again. It's again one of those moments we have to select that part. Okay, well that's kind of looking right. Now we can move this one out like that a little bit. Move that one out like that a little bit. Not quite exactly, but that's fine. Okay, now what I want to do is actually turn on George in the background here. We're going to unfreeze all, and with George unfrozen, we will select him, and we'll go into his properties, and we'll make it so you can see him. We're going to Alt-W and move George back a little bit. Wrong one. There we go. Okay, so now I can come back to Alt-W, F for the front view. And now I want to shape up the arms a little better on the biped. Move them out so joints are matching joints. That's kind of good. now I'll make it big that way. Select the middle one here, make it big that way. And what this is doing, whoops, wrong way. What this is doing is allowing me to control better the bounding envelopes that these skeletons make, and the envelopes are what contain the vertices of the mesh within a certain area, so they don't just stick to a spot and move away. By deforming the skeleton like this, it's easier to control those when you initialize biped. Actually, that middle one looks pretty good already. And just the hand a little bit. And we'll stretch the hand up this way a little bit. And I would just like to make mention now that I think as a drummer, a 2-mouse system would be really cool. I like hotkeys on keyboards, but I could really utilize the ability to be clicking with one hand and then clicking with the other. So, you know, if anybody wants to put together a dual mouse system, that'd be really neat. It would be particularly handy with a double screen setup where you can have your left hand working over on the second screen for selecting tools and whatever, right hand over doing the artist's part. Okay, whatever. Now we're going to select these two here and stretch those out to fit the that part a little better. And I guess I can come up a little bit with that, come up a little bit with that. Select those two, make them fatter. Select the feet, select the feet. Make those wider. And I will assume everything is just fine now. Let's go back to Alt W, and I will select George and move him back into place. And he looks pretty well all taken up. Let's Alt W that one. Make it so I can adjust those arms a little bit better. It's the only place I would see any particular error. I could fix that up pretty quick right now. Actually, let's stretch out the size of that foot, and I guess I'll do the same with this one too. Just make sure that's all covered. And these ones here, I'm just going to stretch them out bigger that way just because of the size of the mesh itself. I want to make sure it's all contained in there. It just makes it easier. You don't have to go assigning any vertices after the fact. Alt W, okay, so I will again now assume that that's all fine. What I'm going to do now is save out the FIG of that particular biped shape, so if anything goes awry, I'm able to just call up the shape and apply it straight to any new biped that I can make. So we will save that as an FIG. George 3. Save. Okay. Turn off the figure mode and set that all up like that. Grab a bit more water here. Okay, now an important part is to assign the physique of the biped to the mesh, so the mesh is actually controlled by that biped now. So to do that, we're going to come back into the front view, Alt W, put it back into wireframe, select the mesh itself, come into modify and apply a physique. And the physique here, what we have to do now is select this attach to node, and what the node is this little blue diamond in the navel area, crotch area, wherever you want to look at it. And you select that and assign there. Now what I do is a 3 links connection, deformable, initialize. Okay, now when we come back into here, it's hopefully now joined up. Well, that looks pretty good. And that looks pretty good. That's all looking good. Looking good. Okay, so I'm going to do an incremental save. And the best way to test it now is to actually assign a walk cycle to it. Turn off the grid and then see if anything gets left behind as it's moving along. So it's a nice, quick, easy process. Just with the skeleton selected, you come over into motion and you would be selecting the footstep mode and come down here to create multiple footsteps. I'm going to create 10 of them. Okay. Now see them all on screen here. Let's just turn this a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is turn off everything that is the biped. Well, not turn it off, but hide it so you don't see it. So letter H, select everything except for George 3. Select and hide selection, and we'll come up here and we'll go to smooth. Okay. Whoop, I guess I was a little premature. I want to unhide all. Unhide all. Okay, so I want to have him selected. With him selected, I want him back in the footstep mode. I have to assign the biped to those footsteps, so that's just by clicking there. Okay, now he's assigned. So now I can go letter H on the keyboard, select everything except the George, select, hide selection. Okay, so now let's see him walk. Does anything get left behind? No, he's all stuck up. Really nice. Okay, we're going to go back to here. We will undo. Let's go undo. Well, I like the undo creation, so we will undo to there. And now we'll undo edit, undo selection. Undo select. Where the heck are we? So I think that's all that we, pretty much where we need to be. Letter F, front of it. Now we're going to save out the, well, we're going to turn off footstep mode. And we're going to save out the PSK, which is the data file information for the mesh. So for that we come to the Actor X export, down to browse, and we want to save, that's just for using the path, and it's going to be called George 3, and save mesh ref pose. Okay, and one PSK written. Excellent. So now what we want to do is add a custom animation to this to go along with it before we bring it into Unreal Ed. So to add the custom animation, we're going to first hide the mesh because we don't need to work with the mesh any longer. So hide selection. We're going to do a save as one more incremental save, because what we have to do now is leave this area, because we're going to go and work with this in the motion, and that's, we can just click here and open up a biped file, which is an animation file designed for the bipeds, and it's that simple to add an animation. But what we're going to do first is create a biped out of a BVH file, and a BVH file is a BioVision hierarchy file, and that is a motion capture file, and it's a little funkier to work with, and the reason we have to do it this way is if we just assign the BVH file straight to this skeleton, it would work fine, because the skeleton is just a deformed regular skeleton, regular biped. But if we were to assign it to a BVH to the Scar character from Unreal Tournament 2004, it has a tail, and the BVH file doesn't take into account any influence of bones that are not already written up in its hierarchy. So the hip would move, but the tail would just stay where it is and would get all stretched and distorted. Whereas by converting it to a biped, bringing it in, the hip is all that's registered as being there to move, but bipeds understand the influences of that hip moving on the tail, so the tail would also move. So what we want to do first, now that we've saved it as an incremental, is reset. No, I don't want to save. Yes. And we're going to just create a standard biped right quick. There it is. That's just the skeleton kind. I wanted to go with the classic. And come back into here and down to motion capture. We're going to open up a BVH file. It's also BIP files are really ridiculously difficult to find online. BVH files, you'll find university students with hundreds literally inside of university project folders. So this is this one here is actually came from, I believe, motec.com or something, motion capture company, and they have one free BVH file on their site, and it's this particular one. you're familiar with it. So this is what we do is we assign that BV8 to a standard biped, and this box opens up when you open up a BV8, and all we want to do here is just turn on the footstep extraction, flatten the footsteps to Z or Z equals 0, and come down here to OK, and it will create the footsteps, and then we'll throw them onto there. And now what we do is we just come up to this part of the biped that was done in motion capture. Other stuff has now come on and be able to be done, learn about it. This is now we're coming up to the biped. We're going to save that out as great, as a biped file, no problem, save. And now we're done in here. We're going to come back, reset, no, yes, and we're going to open up recent, the George 303, this one here, and with him selected, we're going to come up into the motion here. We're going to open up the biped and wait for it to do its thing and stick the motion information of that onto that skeleton. And now we're just going to come over here to save it out in Actor X, and the output folder is use path, name is George 3. Down here we do George 3 as well, and here we'll do George 3, but we'll call it anim. And down here it's 0 to 386, and we do a digest animation. That's done. Come down to Animation Manager, George 3 anim up here has all the information you need to know. Move it on over, save, and now it's saved the George PSA, which is the A standing for animation information. And great, okay, and we're done here. So now we'll go into Unreal Ed. First thing we want to do is double click here, make that up to a nice full screen. Files, textures, we want to import the George texture. So George 3 DDS, okay, and it's just going to be George here. We don't need to generate bitmaps, okay. Select that just so that when we come into here and it's ready to go. File, mesh import first, George 3 PSK, that's the data file, just the mesh information and how it's linked up to a skeleton. It's going to go into a George 3 package if we were to save it out. Okay, now we have a new object, George 3. We already have the texture selected over in the texture browser, so we can just come on over to skin here, material, here we would just go use, there it is, skinned up, looking great. Now we're going to come on up to the this animation import. This is the animation file, the A file. Bring it on in, George 3, everything's fine there, okay. So now we're going to link up the anim to the mesh, and we'll open this up a little bit. Zoom him in, and actually we'll zoom him out a little bit, and let's see if he works. There you go. George is alive. This is a short tutorial on how to bring in your model as a player character. First thing you want to do is import the texture, and it's George 3 on this one. Nothing there, no bitmaps needed. Okay, over to animations, mesh import, import the PSK. Again, it's a George 3. Okay, let's come on over this way. Skin, material, use. Looking good so far. Now what we want to do is the animations here. No, we don't. First we want to come on over to Thunder Crash. We want to copy mesh properties, bring them on over to George 3. Paste the mesh properties. Now he's with the orientation necessary for the game. Now we'll come on back to the Thunder Crash model, and the animations over here. Control C to copy those. Back to George. Control V, enter, and just refresh George. A little bit of that. And if everything worked out, we would do a link up anim and mesh. And there he is, ready to be used in game. Take him in, save him out, and frag your friends.